Welcome to Legacy Unscripted, sponsored by Progeny Coaching. This is the podcast where sports and business collide. I'm your host, Russ Katzman, and here we'll skip the fluff and we'll get straight to the hustle. From athletes turned entrepreneurs to impact-driven business leaders, we dive into the wins, the lessons, and some of those failures that make legacies worth living. Today, I'm happy to welcome Lou DePaoli, president of General Sports Worldwide. Lou, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I'm happy to have you here. So, talk to me about this new thing you've got going on, the Clubhouse. You know, a lot of people will come onto the show, they'll recognize your name from things you've done in the past, and we'll get to some of those. But this Clubhouse idea, tell me about it and why it's important for you.
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, I appreciate you having me on. So the Clubhouse is a career development platform for people looking to get into the sports industry. It was started many years ago by a gentleman by the name of Bob Hamer. And Bob's a longtime friend, and he's still a collaborator with us on the Clubhouse. But he built this platform as an opportunity for people to get a job in sports. And essentially it was a job board. But then it morphed into, you start to realize that people didn't necessarily want the job board. They wanted coaching. They wanted mentorship. So we built, when we bought the Clubhouse 3 years ago, we built and enhanced the mentorship platform there. So right now there's 170 mentors on there.
Wow.
These are people in the sports industry who have raised their hands and said, yes, I want to give back. I want to help others. I want to pay it forward and get people involved into the sports business and give them some coaching and some counseling. So they don't get paid for any of this. They do it because they want to. And if somebody is a member of the Clubhouse, a pro member, they can go online and book times on their mentors' calendars directly.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Using Calendly. So it's amazing. And it's been really fruitful for us because it gives us, we have 15,000 members in the Clubhouse right now. And it just gives you a really wide base of young people who are eager to get in the business, or if they're early in the business, they're looking to take that next step, or maybe looking for an opportunity to work somewhere. And because at the heart of us, we love coaching, we love developing, we love mentoring people, and we want to give back. And it's one of the reasons why we bought the Clubhouse in the first place. So, it's been a lot of fun, and we're looking to continue to see it grow for years to come.
That's terrific. Well, you talk about grow in years to come. Where do you take that?
So what we've been trying to do over the last year and a half is use the Clubhouse as a portal for colleges to use to share best practices. So again, if you're a sport marketing or sport management major and you're looking to get into the sports field, we've been working with some professors on using our curriculum that's posted on the website as part of their curriculum to use in class. So instead of buying a book, a textbook potentially, maybe instead of buying 5, you buy 4, but with some of that extra money, for $7 a month, you become a pro member at the Clubhouse. And then you can download, we have years worth of webinar content, best practice content, blog posts written by mentors or written by some of us here at the Clubhouse. So this will give you the real opportunity to see how does the sports industry work from people who are in the business, not just from a textbook.
Yeah, that's great.
That's kind of our next evolution here.
That's great. Well, as you and I talked about coming on the show, this show really targets those that are either athletes turned entrepreneurs or young entrepreneurs that are just getting started. And I love looking at the lessons that we've learned along the way. Yeah. The interesting thing about the Clubhouse is that membership style of a format, right? We're seeing memberships everywhere. Every once in a while, I'll get a client who's an entrepreneur who wants to be in this membership space. Talk to me about how you go from, very little exposure, people don't know who you are, some of that kind of stuff, to getting enough momentum to get a good membership base, because you can't pull people into the platform unless you have the mentors. You can't, the mentors aren't going to do any good if they're speaking to an empty room. So talk to me about kind of balancing both sides of that equation.
Yeah, no, that's great. Great question. So look, the key, since we bought the Clubhouse a little over 3 years ago, we've grown the membership base by over 50%, right? So for us, what we've done is we've really tried to focus on our social media right? So
Mm,
going out there and letting people know what we are, who we are, what the clubhouse is about, but keep it very simple. Like, you want to get a job in sports? This is where you learn from other people who are in the business.
yep.
Pretty simple stuff. But we've also had a very proactive approach of going out to college campuses, either in person or virtually, to talk to the students, right? And talk to in mass and let people know this is the benefit of joining the clubhouse. I mean, we joke around like for $7 a month, that's maybe one less cold beverage if they're of
Yeah.
age, right? Per month, you can turn around and actually help yourself with your career and advance it forward.
Yeah.
And then we just try to make sure that we're very conscientious about what we do and how we do it so that we partner with a few other third parties who provide us some content. One of them specifically being a former coworker of mine and a good friend, a gentleman by the name of Eric Cusin.
Mm,
Eric is very big in the mental health space in sports and does a lot of work in that space. So we share his content, we support his content. He was leading a podcast with us for a while, a bunch of webinars, because mental health is so important.
right.
Especially you have these students in college. It's really important. You're maybe graduating, and now you've got to face that next step of, okay, now I'm in my first step of my career, and you can deal with other people in the sports vertical who have faced similar challenges. And obviously Eric would tell his story. Everybody tells their story how they've overcome things and
Sure.
try to stay positive because it's not easy. And that's what we try to do to keep the clubhouse relevant to that audience is make sure that we're partnering with people like Eric and others to keep it very topical and just very, informational so that people know we care. That we're not here to just churn people in and out. Like we want to build better people and better people to work in this industry to help drive the industry forward.
No, that's good stuff. Yeah, I think the one thing that I like about what you're saying is a lot of times when companies are trying to build that base, they'll try to throw spaghetti against the wall to see what's going to stick, and they'll hit everything. They'll hit email marketing and social and in person and flyers on campus and everything else, and none of it gets done well because they're trying to do too much of it simultaneously.
Yep.
Right. And so it's better when we can get to a point where we're attacking one or two avenues, maybe three, but at least, one or two. And in your case, social and going on site,
Yeah,
period.
that was it. I mean, it was pretty easy, quite honestly. Again, from many years of learning the hard way that you don't want to take the shotgun approach to marketing, we just focused in on what was working and
Yep.
it just kept doubling down, right? And people on our team are probably weekly on calls, mostly video at this point, with college students, to large classes or entire organizations to say, here's what the clubhouse is about. We have a quick demonstration that we'll do. We actually do a live demo to walk them through the site to show them the content that's there and then get a bunch of people to sign up right on the spot. So,
Yep.
and we've done some conferences. We've gone to, the SMA and NACDA and some others. These are, college sports related
Yep.
conferences. Those help too, but really just social media has been the biggest driver, putting things out on Instagram, TikTok, and the biggest one is LinkedIn.
Yep.
Most students starting now, especially as freshmen, we're hearing like, okay, you gotta have a profile and
Sure.
it has to look professional. You need to put your information up here. And so they see our content on LinkedIn specifically, then they start following. Then we follow them back. And then someone reaches out and says, hey, you can become a member. Oh, how does that work? And then we just have that conversation organically through LinkedIn.
That's terrific. Yeah, and then getting them started so soon on LinkedIn. I think I joined LinkedIn back in 2006 when people were just starting to figure it out. And it's today what it is today versus what it was then. And back then it was an online resume
Yeah.
per se,
Yep.
right? And now it's more a marketing tool than anything else. And connecting it, it was always meant to be a networking type of an app, but it wasn't until probably the last 6 or 8 years. I don't know that it really came into its own as a networking tool.
Yeah. I agree 1,000% because, like you, I was on there from the beginning,
Yep.
but I would never check. I mean, I wasn't looking for jobs, right? I mean, I didn't have to
Yep.
post my resume. I just would put it out there, and every now and then you'd get a connection request and somebody you knew. Oh yeah, okay, I'll
Yep.
connect to her. Now it's open on a browser window all day long, right?
Yep.
I get probably 30 to 40 requests to connect a day. And then you have people just reaching out for information.
Yep.
Okay, now you can see it's becoming a marketing platform as well as a great networking tool. So it's really evolved, and I think that's definitely helped our business significantly. But you have to manage or curate, your LinkedIn
Yeah.
profile very carefully.
Yes. And it's interesting, and I know it's a bit of a rabbit hole, but I love the fact that you're working with them specifically from the industry that they want to be in, that you've got members of that industry that are working with them to say, these are some of the keywords, these are things that people are searching on relative to LinkedIn. This is what they want to see in your profile. The average person on LinkedIn starts with, what they do, what they're doing, what their position is, and all that kind of stuff. But if you want to market to that job, just like they used to tell you about your resume,
Yeah,
market to the job that you want to have, you should be doing the same thing with LinkedIn, right? It should be thought leadership and following and all those things that are where you want to go with your career, not necessarily where you are, where you've been.
agreed.
So,
We actually we host our own. We've done a bunch of webinars over the last few years, and we actually had the former head. She's now the former head of the LinkedIn sports vertical come
mm,
on and gave a webinar. It was by far the largest webinar we'd ever hosted live. Uh,
wow.
and she walked through all the right points of like, here's what you need to have in your profile. Don't look at this as a resume. Here's how the algorithm works. If you post something, here's hashtags or not hashtags. Use video. You like use icons. Like how the
Yep.
algorithm works, and you can see the light bulbs of people just like, oh my goodness, like I had no idea. So someone who was on our team at the time, a gentleman by the name of Gentry Mullins, and Gentry is now a VP for the Brooklyn Nets basketball team.
Mm,
Um, he wound up saying, you know what, I'm really going to go after this aggressively. Started posting content 2 or 3 times a day. He went from like 500 followers to like 20,000 in like 9 months.
wow.
I mean, he was aggressively putting out content, a ton of video, and following all the best practices, and it worked. It's like, okay, so it's no wonder why. And I just read a story the other day. The Nets attendance is actually up this year, even though the team has struggled. And they said
Mm,
they attribute it to their social media approach,
yep.
with obviously combined. It was a combination of LinkedIn, but a lot of TikTok. And it's just like if you understand how these platforms work and understand like what the right messaging is on the platform, you could people will believe in you and people will follow you and people will trust you. So kudos to Gentry and the rest of the folks at the Nets for making that work.
Oh, that's incredible. Yeah, it's interesting because you even see out there some of these fictional teams, right? Ones that have come up in movies and some of that kind of stuff that are, Shorzy and some of those others that are out there. They've got all this following, massive following. They don't even play in a stadium. They don't even really play at all, but yet they've got followings that are bigger than some of our major league clubs as it is.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. I mean, look, even like what the Savannah Bananas. I just literally
Savannah, yep. Jesse Cole, yep.
yeah, before our call, I had just watched a video from when they were in Atlanta, I think a week or two ago. Seeing Jesse and seeing the people and the way he's marketed,
Sure.
amazing, right? And what he's done, and he's authentic, and how they do things, and how they brand things all the way through to the nth degree, and puts on a great show. He's packing baseball parks all over the country.
Yep.
It's amazing, and he's done a phenomenal job. They do a lot on social media, and he does it the
Yep.
right way.
He does. I mean, it's unbelievable the way people can take something like that and just blow it up. Talk to me. Let's take a step back.
Yeah.
General Sports Worldwide. What is it, and how does the clubhouse kind of fit into that?
Sure. So, General Sports Worldwide is a global sports agency. We have a lot of different verticals, here.
Sure.
We're based in the U.S., in Michigan. The folks who work in the U.S. were all remote. So, again, we all live somewhere different. But most of our employees are actually in the UK. So, roughly about
Hmm.
75% of our company is based in the UK. So, we have an office in London and then about 2 hours north of Manchester. And what the company does as a whole is the main verticals are athlete representation. So we represent a ton of young professional athletes looking to get their start in their careers, mostly in, as they call football, or what we call soccer here in the States.
Sure.
There's some F1 drivers, golfers, swimmers, and a few other, you know, athletes that we represent, but it's mostly very heavy into soccer. We're also in the mergers and acquisitions business. So we'll go and help people buy and sell clubs, mostly at this point, second, third division, again, soccer clubs, predominantly in the UK. We're in the process now of expanding that to go outside into the rest of Europe and the rest of the world. We also have a group in the UK that focuses on helping soccer clubs drive their business forward. So doing a bunch of business consulting.
Hmm.
And then from our side here, what we're doing out of the United States, again, based out of the United States, I'll explain the global part of what we do in a second. We've been focused on, besides the clubhouse, consulting. So helping sports organizations drive their business forward. Again, using my experience, my team's experience on how to help that business move forward. And however you define moving forward, right, could be defined by you. Then we also get involved with executive recruiting, helping
Okay.
people, our clients, find the right fit for some of their key jobs. And then the last thing we do is a lot of coaching and leadership training, where we'll actually get on site or in some case virtually, but mostly
Sure.
on site, get into the weeds with a group and let's talk about training. If it's sales training, if it's leadership training, get in there and coach them up. How do we help them become better? And as we look at this, the one thing that we were kind of lacking, since we're so North American focused on my team, is we added somebody, Kyler Holmquist, a little over a year ago, who has more of a global, remit in his
Mm.
portfolio. So he's focusing on executive search, consulting. He's also brought some data insights to us, so that he's
Nice.
helping a bunch of these international sports organizations understand the metrics that drive their business. Where some of the big five consulting firms are going to charge you hundreds of thousands of dollars. We can charge you a little bit less, but give you maybe a little bit better output. We're biased, obviously, but
Sure.
because we have the experience of actually running sports organizations, and we know what you want to see and what the data really tells you.
Yeah.
So that's probably a long-winded answer about what General Sports Worldwide is, but it's constantly evolving.
No, that's pretty cool. So, and I got to ask this because I'm curious. You've been at the executive level of multiple franchises, storied history in Major League Baseball as well as others. Do you get yourself down in the day to day? Do you find yourself kind of wanting to get into those data conversations and how we're going to change things going forward?
Absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely. I love the data. Look, I am the
Yeah.
original data nerd, right? I mean, I think that was probably one of the biggest strengths for my career is, yes, I was blessed with being able to be, understand selling, marketing, driving revenue. But I was also a data person at heart, right? So
Yeah.
when I worked at the NBA in the league office, the commissioner then, David Stern, his nickname for me was Rain Man,
Oh,
because
was it?
when we would get together and meet, and we met with David as a group every quarter, you
Yeah.
know, I could just start spouting numbers off the top of my head, and he would be looking around the room like, how does this guy know this? Can anybody fact check him initially early on? And then they realized I was on top of every number. I just
Mm.
understand the data. I understand how things work. I understand that. I mean, I built the first, business intelligence team in professional sports on the business side back in 2005, with the Atlanta Hawks and Atlanta Thrashers. So, yeah, long-winded answer, but yes, I am a big fan of the data, and I love getting involved deep into it if I can.
No, I just think it's great that even at the level where you are in your career and that kind of thing, that you still want to get down in the weeds with the data because and I do this with entrepreneurs. We talk through the idea of when you can build it up, then you can, you know, find a successor, find a succession plan, hand it off onto somebody else, and you can get out and be a rainmaker, or you can be the face of the company, or you can do the things that you want to do. Sometimes I'll get somebody that wants to stay in the day to day, and they hire in a CEO to be the face of the company, etc.
Yep.
But the things that we do well, the things that we really enjoy, that's where we should find our passion. And if you love to be in the data, I just think it's awesome that you can still be at a higher level of the organization and then dig down in the data because you're curious and
Yes,
that you can learn from it.
absolutely. And people who know me know that first thing in the morning, that's the first thing I do, right? Like when I
Yep.
worked for the Mets or the Pirates or the Atlanta Hawks, I was usually in the office by 8 a.m. at the latest. At the Mets, our office didn't even open until 9:30, right?
Yep.
And then, as you know, in baseball, you have a lot of games and a lot of late games. I may get home at 11 o'clock or midnight. I'd be in the office at 8 o'clock, and I'd usually spend the first 45 minutes to an hour going through all the data from the night before, like digging in deep, like what
Sure.
worked, what didn't work, what is it telling us, going through all of our latest dashboards, just figuring things out. So that way it just formulated my strategy for the day or gave me a handle on, okay, here's what's working, here's what's not working. Maybe we need to make some adjustments, a little fine tuning here, a little fine tuning there. Then all of a sudden,
Sure.
the momentum can keep rolling. So I still do the same today.
Well, and I think there's an element of leading by example. By doing that, for you, it's part of your nature and it's part of how you work. But there's others that how they work is they come in at 10 a.m. and leave by 4, thinking that they can lead a team that way, and it's not necessarily true. So I love the idea of leading by example. Talk to me a little bit about culture. The thing that happens when you get in, especially to these elite leagues, is you're dealing with top level athletes, and sometimes billionaires or more than that. And there's a lot of ego that goes into some of those individuals that you're dealing with. Kind of getting it at both ends when you're part of that management team. Talk to me about how you establish a culture and set expectations in that environment.
Yeah, it's a great question because, in the sports world, again, my career has been focused on the business side of sports.
Sure.
You're still dealing with the team. You get to know all the players and all that kind of stuff, and you can see how that works. But on the business side, a lot of people in the front office are former athletes or maybe even current athletes. They're just maybe a little bit past their prime, right? I mean,
Sure.
we all consider ourselves athletes at some point. So
Yeah.
everybody's competitive. Everybody's got an ego. You have to make sure that you don't let that run amok because because I've consulted for so many teams over the years where sometimes that can be a real problem. So as you are building out your organization, the first thing you need to do is to figure out like what kind of culture do you want?
Hmm.
Right? Not what your culture is, what do you want? And then you have to build it. If you don't have it, how do you build it? If you think you're close, how do you make it better? The culture I always wanted in our organizations that I worked for was one of leadership and development. I wanted to develop our people personally and professionally. So it was almost like educational. I
Yep.
used to joke that I considered myself a frustrated college professor, right? I wanted to teach everybody, and it didn't matter. And I just felt like, was I an expert in finance? No, but could I learn from the finance people? Absolutely. Could they learn from me? Absolutely. Like, I just wanted everybody to understand, like, we can all learn from each other,
Yep.
all make ourselves better. We're not in competition with each other. Let's figure out a way to get everybody to sing on from the same song sheet or row in the same direction, like all those quotes that you hear, but build it with an attitude of personal and professional development was the key component. And it's amazing how everything else kind of fell in place from there. You get rid of the people that are focused on me,
Sure.
right? You wind up finding more people that are team players, people that are really serious about having a career in the industry. They're not working for I'll just pick a sports team. They're not working for the Chicago Bulls because they were a lifelong Bulls fan.
Right.
They're working there because they want a career in this industry. And yeah, if it's at the Bulls for the rest of my career, great. But if I'm here for 5 years and I got to go to the Celtics for 5 years and I got to go to the Miami Dolphins for 10 years, like that's what I want. Those were the people I looked to hire. And it didn't matter. Didn't care if you didn't know anything. Some of my best employees, like my top people, were people that weren't
Yeah.
even huge sports fans. It's like baseball fans. I mean, I would say one of the top people I hired, but I was in Miami with the Marlins back in the 90s, wasn't even a baseball fan. Not a baseball fan. Not a basketball fan. A little bit of college football, but really into bicycling, right?
Hmm.
Really into kayaking, like into all these other sports, and everybody else in the room, right? Because we had a sales room there that was probably about 35 people. We're all football, baseball, basketball, and this guy was like, I don't really care about any of that. I want a career. I
Hmm.
want a career in sports. I don't care what's going on the field. I'm selling entertainment. And it turned out that, many years later, he's a very high level executive in the sports industry.
That's unreal. Yeah, and I think you hit on it right at the end there is I'm selling entertainment. I'm not selling baseball, basketball, et cetera, et cetera. It's I'm selling entertainment. And there's I think it was Alex Ramosi put out a podcast once upon a time talking about how businesses don't necessarily understand what their business is
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, and until they figure that out, they have trouble selling it. Right? Yeah, Coca-Cola, not in the beverage industry, they're in the distribution industry.
Yep.
Right? We saw evidence of that when they bought up Snapple in the mid '90s, right? And suddenly Snapple went through the roof. How? Because they had these distribution channels, right? McDonald's, not a fast food industry, they're a real estate industry,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're all about the real estate from the restaurants. So, I think for you to understand, or the people that work with you to understand that we're not in the baseball, basketball, football industry. We are in the entertainment industry,
Correct.
right? The people that work with the clubhouse. We're not in a talent management or recruiting type of thing. We're in a success or an education or one of those kind of industries, right?
Exactly.
It's
Look,
interesting point to point out.
yeah, I mean, look, that's one of the key things that, we always like to let people know when we were hiring and we
Hmm.
talked about it every meeting. Like, we don't sell wins and losses, right? We're in the entertainment business. We're in the making memories business
There
for
you
people,
go.
right? I mean,
Yep.
think about Disney, right? I mean, that's so I just want people to walk out of here with like, wow, that was a great experience. And if you ask them afterwards, what was the score? Some will know, but some might be like, you know what? I don't know. I had such a great time. I forgot what the score was. That's okay. You know what I mean? That's not a bad thing. You have your diehards and you have your casuals, and you have to figure out the right mix there. But at the end of the day, sports, if you play it long enough, it's a zero sum game. You flip a coin enough times, you're going to get 50% heads and 50% tails. So you have to realize that if you sell somebody or you promote yourselves as we're winning, we're great, we've got a great team. Well, the minute you're not, their reason for
Sure.
buying goes away. The reason for engagement is gone. But if you sell them on, we provide a great entertainment experience, unless you really fall off on the entertainment level that you're providing,
Yep.
that's something you can control. I can't control what happens on the field or on the court or on the ice because, if you look at my history, uh, I was on part of more bad teams than good. So, and I had the worst record in the league multiple times, and yet we still were able to advance the business forward
Yeah.
because we weren't focused on, yeah, the team was terrible. So what? Come on out. We got fireworks after the game. We're doing this kind of like Jesse with at
Yeah.
the Bananas. It was more about the entertainment, what we were giving away, and it's fun for kids and fun for the family. Like, don't worry about the fact that we've lost 8 in a row. It's
Yep. I
okay.
was thinking of that as you were saying it. If you think of the stuff Jesse's, what was it that the Savannah Bananas had for a record last year? Do you know? Does anybody know? Do you know if they won a game last week? Do you know if they've ever won a game? Do we care?
No.
It's not about so much the winning and losing of the score or any of that kind of stuff. You go to that for the entertainment to see a
Yes.
guy do a backflip and pitch from between his legs and whatever else they're doing. I mean, it's crazy. And,
Yeah.
they're giving back to the community and the Make-A-Wish and all these kind of things that they do. And you see on social, you see them do these things and just providing their product of entertainment. It's unreal.
Yeah, he's nailed it for sure.
Yep.
It's the modern day Globetrotters, right? For
Yeah.
those of us that remember when the Globetrotters were the biggest touring act in the world,
Yep.
it's the same thing. And he's just done it to obviously modernization, and he's done it to a really great extent in understanding how this operates.
Yep.
That was kind of, and not that we were the bananas at any of the places I worked, but you had to put on a good show or it just wasn't going to work. So we would spend as much time focusing on what the music was, what
Yep.
pops played when, making sure that if we did something, it got a crowd reaction in between innings or in between periods,
Hmm.
between quarters, that the guest services, like the ticket takers and the ushers on your way in, were trained to the nth degree. We did Ritz Carlton training when I was at the Mets for City Field. Like
Yep.
that level, we wanted people to walk into the ballpark and feel like, okay, this is a completely different experience. And that's what separated us for so many years from others, whether it was at City Field or PNC Park. With the Pirates, you just had to do something different to let people know that we're here for entertainment. And then when the team gets good, great, that's gravy. That's okay. But in the meantime, you've got to figure out a way to get people here and make them happy and get them to come back.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting on who you focus, or on whom you're going to put that focus. Because I'll tell you, personally, I was a season ticket holder, and I won't call out the team. Season ticket holder for a decade for a team, and place where I formerly lived. And I'll tell you, probably that second or third year, and I was a club level ticket holder. I was fortunate enough to be at that level, but not the top, not the ble- uh, nosebleed seats or anything
Yeah.
like that, right? But some club level stuff. And what they did was they started to segregate within that level, and they cut off seating on this side or that side within the club. Which in the club it was air conditioned and all that kind of stuff and views of the thing. Well, in this place where I was living, it was quite warm. And you come up and you want to get in the club, go to the AC. Well, there's no place to sit anymore. Or if it's raining outside, there's no place to sit anymore. And so you end up standing or you have to stay in your seat. And it cut off probably 2/3 for these exclusive additional add on clubs within the club. And you'd walk in, and pre-game, there was no place to sit. During the game, there's no place to sit. Um, and I think what happened was they focused too much of their attention on a certain higher level of people that were going to buy into these clubs, as opposed to the average person who is, in here game after game, week after week, buying up a couple hot dogs, a couple beers, a couple, whatever. And I'll tell you, I was in Mercedes-Benz Stadium for the first game after Arthur Blank and company opened that up, and I'll tell you that Packers Falcons game, that Thursday night game, oh, loved it. Big Packers fan, as you can see behind me,
Yep.
but it was an awesome experience, and the whole idea of $2 hot dogs and inexpensive concessions as it was brand new back then, home run for them. When they looked at the numbers afterwards, I mean, tremendous work that entire team did, and I loved it. Great experience. I can't say enough about it. But that's the contrast of two different clubs doing two different things, two different approaches to who they're catering to.
Yeah. No, that's really well said because I've seen that, and sometimes again now that we consult for a lot of properties,
Yep.
one of the things I always try to do is say, let me make sure when I'm in town to visit that I get to go to a game. Right?
Yeah.
I don't need a suite. I just you know what? I just want to pass and let me walk around. And then I see things and then right away, or I'll walk up to fans and just start talking to them. They have no idea who I am. Right? I'm
Oh yeah.
dressed something nice, but I'm not dressed in a suit anymore. Right? So I'll walk up to people, but hey, what do you think? Oh, this is a nice club. My first time here. What do you think? And they'll tell you, oh, this is terrible. You should see the long lines. The food is awful. Like, well, okay, then
Yep.
why are you here? Right? Oh, my buddy gave me free tickets. Okay. So,
Yeah.
you start building a profile, and then within, a half of a game, I can go back to the owner or the CEO or the president of the club. Say, okay, here's some quick observations for you. Here's some
Yep.
of the issues that I found already. And they're like, oh, I know. We hear that all the time. Well, if you hear that all the time, what are we doing to change? It's that easy. Oh, our retention rate in that area is really low.
Hmm.
Maybe because this is what's happening. If you can figure that part out, maybe the retention rate is higher, and all of a sudden, now your lifetime value of those customers becomes longer and deeper. So it's just
Yep.
but sometimes it just takes that independent third party to come in and just say, you know what? here's what I see really quickly. And they go, oh, yeah, you kind of know it, but when you're living in it every day, it's hard to lift your head up and see the forest through the trees. So
Yep.
that's one of the things that I love to do is go in and just say, hey, I was at a game recently, where almost all the music was very young, hip, urban music, okay, that they played during the game.
Sure.
I said, okay, well, how do you choose this? Or the players on the team really like this music. I said, if you go around and you look at the makeup of your audience, it was mostly, older white males or even, a mix of people. But
Sure.
maybe you got to maybe mix in a little bit of some other music because eventually I could see because I asked people, they're like, "Oh, it's just drone. I don't listen to this stuff. I have no
Yeah,
idea
it's
what it
just
is."
noise.
And they're not reacting to it. So, but if you play songs, my general rule of thumb was always play songs that everybody knows. Like
Yep.
everybody knows the words to it, right? Because it could be a new recent song, it could be an older song. As long as it has good beat and people know the words, people get into the music. And that's part of the entertainment experience. It's not I have white noise in the background while I'm trying to talk to Russ over a
Yeah.
beer and trying to get business done and it's just pulsating. I don't know what this is. Where if it's a song you feel a little bit better at how it changes your mood.
Yep.
It's minor,
Well,
but these are the things that make the experience better.
yeah.
And look, those are all the little things that, ironically, I was talking to somebody today who used to work at the Disney Institute.
Hmm.
And so they're now in sports, and I'm a big fan of the Disney Institute and Disney in general. And, to see how much attention they paid to the most minute details to make sure that the experience was going to be completely controlled and that you were
Yep.
going to be happy. Now, again, nothing's 100%, but they had everything thought out, measured out, figured out. All the data pointed them in certain directions. Like, okay, like that's what you need to do. You have to really dig in deep to understand what is happening in your facility to get people to come back because Disney is not cheap. Sporting events
Nope.
aren't cheap. Concerts aren't cheap. But if you give a really good, performance or add really good value, people they don't complain about the cost. But if they feel like, hey, you know what? I paid $100 for my ticket. The parking was terrible. The hot dogs were cold. The beer was warm. There was too many people in the club. Like, you know what? I don't know. I don't think I'm going to renew.
Yep.
That's hard to combat, but those are easy things to fix.
Yep. We focus on that emotional reaction, right? I tell this to clients that are selling services all the time. If you can move them emotionally, price no longer matters.
Right.
Right. The logic side, that rider can't control the elephant. Right. The
Yeah.
logic can't control the emotions once they get moving. So, Lou, as we finish up, give me that top one or two lessons that you've learned along the way and entrepreneurial ventures and building teams and building clubs, etc. Give me those top couple lessons that have kind of shaped your career and who you are today.
I'm going to say, number one, and it's something we talked about a little bit earlier, but in order to be successful, you got to have the right culture.
Yep.
Everybody has to be on the same page. And I always use the sports analogy. Everybody grew up playing sports or you've watched sports and you see teams that sometimes are really talented, but they don't win. And then you see other teams that have a lot less talent, but because they play together and they all are in sync with the coach, like they're able to do great things. And it's
Sure.
not an accident that the best leaders produce all these winners over and over and over. So you got to build that right culture and get the right people on the team. Like that's
Hmm.
really important. The second thing that was an expression that you know uh, David Stern used to tell us when we were at the NBA, which at first he said it. His quote was, "Don't believe your own bullshit."
Yeah.
Right? And the first time he said it, we were in a meeting and we were giving him kind of our spin on how things were going. And he's like, "Look, you can BS other people. Don't BS me. And the worst problem is don't ever believe your own BS. Because if you believe your own BS, you're done." So I was like, you know what? I use that a lot in my career to say, you know what? When you're in charge of communications or you're trying to handle a bad situation that happened on the field or in the
Sure.
stadium or a player got hurt or something happened, you're trying to spin it a little bit. That's what you have to do to handle the comms portion of it. But you got to make sure you don't believe your own BS because
Yep.
the minute you believe it, you're over. You're not authentic to who you are, what you are. You're going to be, ignorant to really what some of the issues are. So I think those are two of the biggest things. You got to have culture. Don't believe your own BS.
Well, and I think you kind of you touched on that a little bit earlier on a company that they know what their issue is, but they haven't done anything about it,
Right.
right? So how long are you going to know that this issue exists and not do anything about it? Well, we convinced ourselves it's not really an issue.
Yeah. Well,
Believe in your own BS.
yeah, that's exactly what it's like. Oh, it's not that big a deal. Oh, really? I talked to three people. I bet you if I looked at your survey data, which is where I love getting in deep
Oh, I
and going
bet.
through survey data, because again, it all depends on how you ask the questions when it comes to surveying, who's doing the responding. But I bet you if I ask these people, I put a focus group together and put a bunch of people in a room, I could probably get 9 out of 10 to say, yeah, this is a big problem. Why I'm considering not renewing my seats. That's slippery slope, and a lot of these things are easy fixes. You just have to figure
Yep.
out what it is. I mean, I remember going back to when I was with the Atlanta Hawks. So I had worked at the NBA league office for 5 years. Then I went down to the Atlanta Hawks. We ran the Atlanta Thrashers Hockey Club, and we also ran Phillips Arena, now State Farm Arena.
Okay. Yep.
And I remember looking at a couple years worth of data when I got there because attendance for the Hawks was low, attendance for the Thrashers was actually pretty good, and then
Mm-hmm.
we had no problem selling out the arena for concerts, shows, religious festivals, but we had trouble selling the Hawks. And my staff would always say, oh, it was the pricing, or it was this, or it was that. I'm like, well, Thrashers tickets are more expensive. The Madonna tickets are like 3x what it costs to buy a Hawks ticket. So it can't be the price. Like, what's
Mm-hmm.
the issue? And what's the issue? And what's keeping from families coming to games? And so we looked at a couple years worth of data. And I went back and saw a couple years prior to me getting there. And one of the number one reasons people gave was that they didn't like all the add-on fees when you bought a ticket. They just felt like, hey, if a Hawks ticket is $25, why am I spending 40?
Yep.
Right? So we became the first team when we redid our ticketing deal to do an all-in price. So that when you bought a Hawks ticket starting in, I think it was in 2007 or 2008, and if it
Yep.
said $40, you paid $40. On the back end, we worried about the fees and the taxes and all that kind of stuff, right?
Sure.
All of a sudden you saw a market increase in people buying not only, tickets, but buying more tickets to more games because they didn't feel like, I was paying those fees. That's a simple example, but there's so many people today who don't buy sports tickets because of the fees, or they go to the
Yep.
secondary market to find a lower price. Well, then they pay more fees, so it's this whole thing. If you understand what people are looking for, then you just have to adjust for it. And you just have to figure out how. People thought I was crazy when I suggested it back in 2007. That why don't we just make it all roll into the price? We do the math on the back end.
Sure.
And it was revolutionary. And now it's funny, all these years later, I'm starting to see some clubs go back to that model. So we'll see. I just think sometimes the obvious answer isn't so obvious when your nose is so close to it. And that's why you bring in consultants who can quickly take a look at something and go, hey, did you ever? This is what this says to me. Like, oh,
Sure.
shoot, yeah, that makes sense.
And to your comments earlier, somebody willing to go out and talk to 20 of your 10,000 season ticket holders that are in attendance at a game. Hey, what do you think about this, right? Just a random guy having a conversation. What do you think of your seats? Oh, you've been a season ticket holder for a decade? What's changed? How
Right.
is it different today than it used to be? Right. Yeah, I'm thinking about buying tickets next year. What would you tell me?
Yeah.
Yeah, get that NSF score or NSR score.
Yep.
Um, so need to finish up with you, Lou.
Yeah.
Give me your last couple thoughts. Anything you want to leave with the audience and something else you want to just tack on the end.
Wow. That just wide open like that, huh? Completely open ended.
Wide open. I'll leave it to you.
Look, so I would say, in addition to a lot of what we've already talked about, which you can tell, I think you and I are both very passionate about all these topics.
Hmm.
Um, One of the things that I always encourage people to do, and I talked earlier about developing people personally and professionally, and
Sure.
about education. And for me, I always used to like that. I had a massive library because I'm an incredible reader in my office. There was probably 80, 90, if not more books in my office that I had read, and I would encourage people to read them. And then I would ask them to come back and discuss the book with me.
Hmm.
And then I realized, you know what? That's hard to do because I had certain books that were my favorites and I wanted multiple people to read them. So we created a library. We took my top 10,
Hmm.
my top 20 books that I recommended, and we bought 10 of each of them and created a library at the mess. Right? That way, if you wanted to go out and you could just go borrow it, read it, and put it back. No cost to you. But then we created like a book club. And then you started seeing departments getting together and discussing the books and what they meant. How could it apply? Like just little things like that to hone people in. So the long answer or the short answer to that long soliloquy there is like always be trying to learn. How do you get better every day? And if you're not looking to get better every day, someone else is, and
Yeah.
they're going to surpass you. So you've got to stay ahead of things as best you can by learning and observing and seeing what's going on around you.
That's terrific. I just the number of golden nuggets that we're going to pull out of this show is awesome, Lou. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So that's a wrap for this episode of Legacy Unscripted. If today's conversation sparked something in you, don't just let it sit. Take action today to build your future. Make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone who may need to hear it. If you've got a story to share or you just want to connect, you know where to find me. Until next time, keep it real, keep it bold, and keep living your legacy.